The first is that no one knows you're working for Aunty. You hit him, you go. The second is it's a fair fight. The third is it's to the death.
Who's the bunny?
Welcome to the Mad Max Minute, where we're used to dealing with subtleties as we watch Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome 1 minute at a time. I'm Rick.
And I'm Julia.
And today we're talking about minute 15, which begins with Aunty informing Max that she needs him to kill someone, and it ends with an interested Max asking about his target. One person that's always on target is our guest today, Molly Bailen from the Cabin Minute Cast.
Hey, guys.
Hey, Molly, thank you for ending out the week with us.
Yes, it's been delightful. Thank you.
So we spent a lot of time yesterday talking about Aunty and her deep love for Bartertown. And as we kick off this minute, she's standing at the edge of the penthouse alongside Max, and she looks over at him and she tells him very seriously, "I will do anything to protect it." And she's totally like Mama Bear in this situation. You can tell that there's something threatening her sovereignty.
They have kind of a stare down here. First, like 12 seconds in. And it's two alphas looking eye to eye. I love this moment. This just really brief shot of her, you know, as you were talking at the top end of this, of saying, you know, I'll do whatever to preserve this. And it's not as much like threatening to me. It's just an honest statement of fact. You know, I don't get this villainous sensibility from her, and she's really not. I don't really even see her as a villain. I don't know, how do you guys see her? Because I understand that later on down the road she's going to be an antagonist, but I don't really get that impression from her. I really find her to be very likable. I'm just curious, what do you guys sense from her?
I see her in much the same way you do. For right now, she is a co-character with Max that is helping to move the story forward. Yes, later on, she is going to become the antagonist. She may do a few small villainous things, but doing a villainous thing doesn't necessarily make you a villain. One act doesn't make you the bad guy for the whole movie. So I think antagonist is the proper label for her, but not yet.
Yeah, I think we're getting a glimpse of it, like you said. I really like the whole idea that Aunty is more or less a heroic figure, and she's achieved that status, and now we're getting into that Harvey Dent. She's living long enough to see herself become the villain because she's crafted this world. And I think it was either George Miller or Terry Hayes who said this, but she crafts the world and then she wants to hold so tightly onto it that she's not allowing it to evolve. And so she shifts from that hero of mankind to a dictator of mankind. And I think this interaction that she's having with Max is really helping her formally shift from the heroic figure into the more shady figure, because what she's going to propose is certainly not above board.
No, it's not.
Certainly not.
Which is interesting, because this is somebody who, as we're going to see in coming minutes, is very concerned about the law, that they've created a structure of how to behave. I mean, it's called Bartertown, right? So deals are the very fabric of the civilization that she's created. And we do see, I think maybe it's even in this minute, towards the end, where there's like no, it's later. There's like a spitting of the hand, and then like we're gonna shake on it, kind of like there's this. Yeah, we're seeing eye to eye. You've got a deal here. So like, as you guys were talking about, this is a deal maker. Deals are being made, and there has to be trust in that. There has to be integrity in that. There has to be faith in that. Because if you can't, that's a whole sentiment, honor amongst thieves. If you don't have any trust built into any type of deal, it just breaks down. So obviously enough deals have been made with integrity that have allowed a fabric and a structure to continue and to build a civilization. So that's why this is quite interesting that, you know, the collector's going to come in and be like, you know, there are subtleties here, which is a really nice way of putting it.
Yeah. I like how Aunty doesn't even beat around the bush. She says, I'll do anything to protect it. Today it's necessary to kill a man. And then she asks Max what he thinks of it. And he immediately fires back with asking what she pays. And I love this idea that they don't reveal that they're in search of an assassin until after the audition, because I'm pretty sure that when the collector is sitting down there and he's looking at all the people that walk through, he's not foolish enough to basically openly solicit an assassin out in public with all the prying ears all around.
Right.
Like, he's smart enough to know to let Aunty take care of this. And when Aunty says that this is basically a hit contract, Max doesn't immediately refuse. And I feel like the Max that we saw in the first movie would not be interested in hearing Aunty out. That Max the lawman would have walked away at that point. But the Max that's been wandering around the wasteland for the last couple of decades, not so quick to walk away. He's willing to hear her out. And I've got to say, Auntie's offer to completely re-equip Max with vehicles, animals, even fuel if he wants it. I mean, she says it's a generous offer, and there's no arguing with that.
No, not at all. And he's lost quite a bit. You know, he's still kind of in search of getting back what was his. So I'm kind of curious how you guys interpreted this. Do you interpret him hearing her out as a result of, because I think this is some of 20 years of running around the desert and kind of having some, bending of values? Or do you think that he's got some other game and he's sort of like biting for time here?
I think his end game here is to get his belongings back. I think he's more interested in getting his actual stuff back than getting replacement stuff back. And for him, it's almost the principle of the thing that my things were stolen from me. I'm here to get my things back. And Aunty Entity's offer to re-equip him is interesting because he's there because things were stolen from him. He shouldn't have to kill a man to get those things back. But he's willing to.
Yeah, this is not the first time that Max has been put in a situation where his vehicle was taken from him and someone basically dictates that he must perform a favor to get his own property returned to him.
Right. Yeah, he has been through this before.
When it happened back in Road Warrior, sure, he was just finding a vehicle, but Max still had the willingness to kill people that got in his way. When he was charging back through the raider camp with that rig, he had his shotgun out and he was fully prepared to shoot anyone that got in his way. I mean, the ammunition failed him, but the intent was there, even if the capability didn't exist.
Right. And I think this is a gentle, above board way of asking for somebody to put out a hit. Honestly. And I mean, it doesn't feel very sinister. It just feels like, look, this is a course of business. We have a situation. Can you help us out? And so I feel like, at least in the deal making aspects of things, this, as you're saying, there's lies of omission here. And she does make a comment of like, look, you don't need to know all the particulars with this. Because he doesn't, it's just like, these are just the basics, the basic conditions of why we want this, this is who, and we're going to get more about like who this individual or individuals, so to speak, are, and get a little bit more about, who those individuals are. But it's interesting to me that this isn't above board, that in the course of them creating a law of rule here, that this is something very much like Civilization they're doing on the sly. And it's interesting to me also that there's a mechanism to deal with beefs, but they don't use it for this guy. So I'm kind of curious about what you guys think about that, of like why they have chosen to not just be open about their beef.
I kind of see it as Aunty slipping from the honorable hero into the wasteland tyrant, because she herself established these rules, this way of operating things. And because she's in a situation where that rule is threatened, we're going to learn more about our target. I mean, everybody knows we're talking about Master Blaster, but I don't want to get too far ahead of myself here. But he represents a clear and present danger. Yes.
Thank you.
I was getting the stare down from Julia for that one.
Oh!
I hesitated before I said danger, and she wouldn't let me not say it. But he's a threat to her sovereignty. She's in charge, even though the person keeping the lights on is Master Blaster. And so his own pride is threatening her pride, and she can't go through normal methods to take him out, because the minute she challenges Master at anything, he's going to name Blaster as his champion. And that's just, I don't know why Aunty can't turn around around and instantly declare someone else as her champion. I don't know. I mean, when your entire rule of law is based around funny little rhymes and limericks, I feel like there are subsets and subsections that get tossed by the wayside. She said she was nobody. She wasn't a law writer.
She does make a curious comment to me of like, he's someone like family. So I'm kind of curious if you guys were considering what a backstory might have been, what connections they might have had in the past, and why that might have. I mean, we kind of have a sense of like what he looks like now and why that's causing some aggravation in future minutes. But I'm kind of curious, with somebody who is referred to like family, what do you think the backstory was?
I see two very generalized possibilities. That Aunty knew Master before the fall, perhaps worked with him in some capacity, and knew of his abilities and he knew of her abilities, that thought, hey, if we work together, we can make something of ourselves. Or she met him afterwards, and maybe she had already started Bartertown, and he came along with a set of skills that she found useful and could make her Bartertown even better, and so brought him in probably pretty early. So those are really kind of the two possibilities that I see. Either way, I think they've been together for a very long time. Upwards of 15 years.
Yeah.
Easy.
I, at one point, thought up a situation where Aunty already has a following. She's already got Iron Bar. She's already got a collective of guards. She's got people that are following her around. And then that group come upon this location where Bartertown is currently located. Because I feel like in this thing I cooked up in my head that Master and Blaster were already there. And that Aunty found them in this location and said basically, hey, I can get you raw materials to put your intellect into action, and let's partner. So I like the idea of them knowing each other before the collapse, but I can also see a situation where they meet after the collapse. And I think Julie is absolutely right that whatever the situation is, they've definitely been working together at least 10, 15 years to be that close, and to have so practiced of a way of needling the other person. Like, Master knows exactly how to get on Auntie's nerves. He knows exactly how long it takes for her to react to something. And when Aunty says, this is no enemy, it's almost family, they have a lot of experience with each other. Going back and forth, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I find that to be a very revealing comment that she's even willing to say that to Max, that this is something that's intimate, and we know it's intimate. We have an intimate relationship. We have a close relationship, you know, and there's no shame in this for her. It's a course of doing business, you know, both of them actually. So, you know, obviously they've come to, and this is another question I had. What do you guys think about the collector siding with her? Like, what do you think his reasons are? And I don't know if we have enough information to go on, but I'm kind of curious. He's obviously gotten into cahoots with her to say that this is going to be the correct course of action.
Power. I see the collector and Iron Bar and perhaps maybe Dr. Dealgood being Auntie's counsel. Who she routinely turns to for advice and to execute her wishes upon Bartertown. And if the collector can be her most trusted advisor, that gives him more power.
Each one of these individuals represent a certain aspect of Bartertown. Like, Master Blaster represents the fact that Bartertown has electricity. The collector is, of course, the gatekeeper. He's the one that allows the goods to come in without letting troublesome aspects into the city. Dr. Dealgood facilitates the trade by being an auctioneer / ringmaster and whatnot. And then, of course, Iron Bar is the lead guard. These are all branches that Aunty has access to. And I think the collector and Iron Bar and Dr. Dealgood are able to recognize that if they have the option of throwing their support in behind the charismatic leader and figurehead of this civilization startup, or the dude who keeps the lights running, they're going to throw in with the person that has actual leadership capabilities. The master has got some technical know-how and he's able to deliver a product, but I don't know how good at governing he would necessarily be.
Right.
So I think that's why she's able to hold on to this circle, so to speak. One thing that we might have skipped over, I'd like how Max points out that Aunty has all of these guards, all of these people around her. He says, why me? You've got warriors, you've got weapons, just give the order. And that's what prompts the collector to say that they're dealing with subtleties. I think we're dealing with a very political situation. Mm-hmm. It would not reflect very well on Aunty if she had Ironbar go down into Underworld and just take out Blaster. Mm-hmm. People would very much see that as a negative reflected back on her. It would be like if the president had the Secret Service kill a political rival.
Right.
And it was like obvious who it was that did it and who gave the order.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's how wars get started.
Exactly.
World wars.
Right.
And the last thing Aunty wants is to have to fight a war in Bartertown.
Mm-hmm. Right.
On the opposite hand, you get an outsider to do it, and then they disappear, and it's like, oh.
Yeah, if she can finagle a way that looks fair to the general populace, then the whole problem can just disappear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, we're going to learn slowly over time that Aunty has put in a really effective way of eliminating people. It's just a matter of the right people getting in the right situation. So the collector walks up, mentions subtlety, Aunty Entity mentions family. Max is very critical of this idea. Oh, I see, real civilized, very judgy. Mm-hmm. And a little bit of that Mad Max sass coming in. And then Aunty is very quick to shut that down. She's explaining that her reasoning is not something that Max needs to get involved with. Mm-hmm. All she needs to know is whether or not he wants the deal. And of course, he doesn't necessarily come right out and say yes, but he nods and goes one of those type situations. And so the collector lays down some ground rules. And these rules are very important. They should absolutely be remembered, because what happens eventually...
None of the rules get followed.
Exactly.
Every single rule gets broken.
Rule number 1, no one knows Max is working for Aunty. Above all else, Max is not allowed to reveal that he is on a mission from or associated with Aunty. It is the first and most important part of this arrangement. Along with that is the stipulation that once the job is done, Max is not sticking around. He's not going to be given an apartment in Bartertown. He's not going to be able to settle down there. He is going to take his payment and leave. Because if he does this job and he succeeds and Aunty gives him a ton of stuff and he sticks around, guess who's now a new threat to Aunty? Mm-hmm. So it's very clear. Rule number 1, no one knows he's working for Aunty, which he breaks that rule at the least opportune time. We'll get to that for sure. The number 2 rule is that it's a fair fight. Max can't sneak around with cloak and dagger to do this job. It has to be out in the open with all parties well aware of what is happening. The publicity of this hit is very important. You could argue...
Yeah, it's not a fair fight.
Right.
Exactly.
Which we'll definitely get into when we actually get to that part. But I'm going to say right here, right now, it was not a fair fight.
Yeah,
Max cheated.
He takes a very big advantage in this situation. And like Julia said, we'll weigh whether or not it quantifies as quote unquote fair. But there'll be plenty of time for that later. The third rule, which is also broken, is that the fight is to the death, not to the maim, not to the surrender, not to the pain. This isn't going to be a Prince Humperdinck situation where Max can go all Wesley on the situation. It is to the death. Because in order for this agreement to be fulfilled, Max must kill the target. Then, and only then, will the deal be concluded. And as far as Max is concerned, he's okay with these rules. At the onset, he is perfectly fine. He just asks, who's the bunny? I mean, he's on board, but based on how he'll behave later in this movie, something tells me that he wasn't really listening as closely to the collector as he probably should have.
Yeah. But it does make a lot of sense to me to have it to the death. And separate from, the construct of law that they're operating in, it's also very, I think, an intelligent rule, because should Max not prevail, he's not going to squeal if he's dead.
Exactly.
It's a great context for it to happen in. And I feel like this is, we talked a little bit about this on Wednesday, about civilization and how do you rebuild civilization. And, this is part of Max getting judgy in this moment too, is that she's built a rule of law that she now needs to get around. She's breaking her own law. She's acting out of the integrity of the construct that she herself has actually built. So so she's literally reenacting the problems of the previous civilization. Because in the previous civilization, even, back in as far as history has been, you've got assassins and you've got people who become, entrenched in impasses and have to act shady. And this is absolutely shady. And they are fully aware of the optics of this. And which is also very interesting is that either by the power of this particular individual that they're going to put a hit on, or, just the actual just perception of the rule of law of the land, they're concerned that they're going to look shitty to the rest of society.
Yeah. Auntie's more or less painted herself into a corner with these laws that she's established. They work well with the populace, but where she wants to hold tightly to this world that she's created, she can't step out of that corner because she would be stepping on the thing that she wants to survive. And so that's exactly like I said. They're getting shady with it.
I was thinking about world leaders and history and our current world leaders and how often our own leaders have flouted the law in order to, at least in their eyes, maintain their own civilization or their own power. And to us right now, it's very prevalent in our own leadership, but this has been happening forever. This is a part of civilization. This is the seedy underbelly, that there are always going to be those people who, in order to preserve the civilization or preserve their own power within that civilization, are going to flout the law that they created or that they are supposed to be upholding. And, I'm tempted to say, and we've survived just fine, but in the context of the movie, they didn't survive.
No.
And perhaps that was one of the big reasons why they didn't survive. The opener to Road Warrior does tell us that there was a lot of political aspects to the demise of humankind. It wasn't a freak meteor or anything like that. It wasn't a natural disaster. We brought it on ourselves.
Yeah, and I think that there's a comment that happens in Thunderdome that will be a little bit more poignant about the reason why Thunderdome exists is to prevent war or the eventuality of war. And so I find it very interesting that in this moment, what, Aunty finds it to be completely imperative to remove this individual from power. But, again, it's under her justification of it to preserve civilization. But I don't believe that. And that's really what kind of brings everything down, really.
Yeah, you could argue that Aunty has effectively built something that can survive without her specifically. She's been able to establish a rule of law. And the nice thing about law is that it's written and that it doesn't depend specifically on the charisma of one person.
Right.
And that might be one thing that kind of scares her. The idea that she put all of this work into it, and yes, it's effective at this point, and people are able to work and not have to worry about being robbed or murdered or anything like that, because every time there's violence, they squash it in the Thunderdome and then it's just taken care of. But at the same time, just because everyone is able to meet on that equal footing means that in a way she's also on that equal footing, and she looks at her situation and says, I'm not one of those rabble. I'm not one of the common. I am above that because I have created all of this.
Yep, it's the hubris. And that's what brings the downfall, is that the rule of law isn't enough. She didn't build something to last. It's more about her being built to last versus Bartertown itself.
It's a shame that she didn't build herself a mechanism to retire. That when it was time, maybe after 4 or 8 years, that her time was up and it was time for her to move on, to do something else, to serve a larger purpose, to be an ambassador to the world, to teach others how to do what she did. It's too bad.
You know what she did? She unintentionally created a dictatorial situation. What she should have done is established a constitutional monarchy where she is the queen of Bartertown, yet the actual running and control of Bartertown is left to a council of people. So she still has that figurehead status. She still has that power and importance, but she's not weighed down with the humdrum everyday aspects of it. So she can be like, okay, I'm the queen. I'm going to hang out in my penthouse Collector, you're the Minister of Admittance, and Dr. Doolgood, you're the Minister of Commerce. Take care of your situations. I'm just going to sit up here infallible.
Yep. Yeah, you're right. It's just bad poli-sci.
Yeah.
It really is.
She was nobody before the collapse. When the collapse happened, she probably should have become somebody, and that somebody she should have become was a poli-sci major.
Someone should have dug up a book, but, hey, points for trying. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Oh my God, it's great.
When the apocalypse comes and everyone falls by the wayside, there are going to be a lot of librarians that are going to be saying, I told you so, quite a lot. Mm-hmm. Be like, hey, read a book. We told you to read books.
Oh, man. Yeah, it's books and good retirement strategy. She needed the equivalent of a 401k in this civilization's context.
Mm-hmm.
I love it. It's hilarious. That's good.
That pretty much brings us to the end of this minute. The last thing we see is Iron Bar standing by. He's, I've got to say, not harboring a lot of resentment against Max for throwing him off of the penthouse platform. And I think that more has to do with Iron Bar's loyalty to Aunty than any sort of personal experience or emotion that he has towards Max. Kind of a, I'm not hurt, you're not hurt, let's call the whole thing off type thing.
Yeah, he cooled down pretty quick. Yeah, and his doll head remained very stable and intact. I'm very impressed. Whatever harness situation he has going on there. Mm-hmm. Well done.
He's just standing by and he's watching everybody move around the penthouse, and we see the Collector and Aunty bringing Max over to this large pipe in the middle of the room. And so we're going to find out what that pipe is used for during next week's minutes as we head down under. Well, more down under than we technically already are, but that's beside the point. Molly, is there anything you'd like to plug today?
Yes, I am a co-host to a fabulous little podcast called Cabin Minute Cast with Heidi Bennett, and you can find us at cabinminutecast.com, where we take The Cabin in the Woods apart minute by minute, and probably by the time this airs, we should be pretty close to being done, so you can binge the whole thing, and it'll be magic. So yeah, we're on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook at Cabin Minute Cast.
Nice. And of course, if people are interested in hearing more of us, we do have our weekend show called Anarchy Road. We are making our way through Hook 5 minutes at a time. This week on Anarchy Road, Peter gives a heartfelt speech at a banquet. Bright lights and wind effect cause a great disturbance in the force. And the children were screaming. The children were screaming! So that'll be fun. The Mad Max Minute podcast is a fan project by Rick and Julia Ingham.
The Mad Max franchise was created by George Miller and Byron Kennedy, is presented by Kennedy Miller Mitchell Productions, and distributed by Warner Brothers.
Mad Max Minute is produced and edited by Rick Ingham. Our opening music is Verdi's Dies Irae by Daniel Batista of danielbatista.com. And our outro music is We Don't Need Another Hero by MilitiaVox of militiavox.com.
Our home on the internet is madmaxminute.com. You can follow us on Twitter at madmaxminute, like us on Facebook by searching for Mad Max Minute, and join our Facebook listener group, Mad Max Minute Beyond Microphone.
If you'd like to support the podcast, visit madmaxminute.com, where you can check out our TeePublic storefront by clicking the store link, join our Patreon by clicking the support link, or make a one-time donation by clicking the donate link.
Thank you for joining us for minute 15 of Beyond Thunderdome. We'll see you next time.
Everybody!